Before we start, let me introduce myself. I've been in this industry for almost 10 years now, worked in various roles, not just as a business analyst. I have an engineering and then an MBA degree. After that, I started working, and it's been 10 years now. So currently, I'm working into a business development role, but predominantly most of it was into business analyst. But since I want to be based out of this particular location in India, so I have moved into this kind of business development kind of role, which doesn't really need me to travel much. Right? And I've been teaching for the past 3 years now. So this is more like a secondary job for me. Right? So primarily, I still work with an MNC, and this is more like a secondary profession for me. Right? Yeah. So coming back to the course, this slide crisply summarizes what a business analyst would be doing. Right? So if I have to tell you the primary responsibility of a business analyst, it would be to understand the requirements from the various stakeholders in the project, and then document it in a way such that it's clear and unambiguous and complete. Right? So if the requirements are complete and there are no gaps in that, or everybody understands it in the same way. So that's basically the the main task of a business analyst. Right? So there are some ways in which you can understand these requirements. It's not just going and talking to the person, right? It's not just one-on-one meetings. So there are multiple ways in which you can understand the requirements. In fact, there are 10 ways as specified by IIBA. So that's an institute which oversees the profession of a business analyst, right? So they also offer a certification called CBAP, right? So they oversee this complete profession of business analysis, and they have also published a book called as Business Analyst Book of Knowledge. So it's more like a guide for a business analyst, and it sets the standards and the roles expectation of a business analyst as well. Right? So they define these 10 ways in which you can understand the requirements. So we'll learn those 10 techniques in which we can engage the customer to understand the requirements. Then the next challenge is, once we understand the requirements, the next logical thing is we have to document it so that the technical team can understand it clearly. Right? So that's where the analysis and documentation comes into picture. There are multiple frameworks which have evolved over time, and each one of them is used in a different context. Right? The most popular one being the object-oriented and UML-based use cases. Right? So that's a primary tool which is used to capture the requirements, and the deliverable from this both elicitation and analysis documentation is called as business requirements document, or popularly called as the BRD. Now, a business analyst would play a significant role in churning out this BRD, right? So it's your responsibility to understand all the functional requirements and then document it such that the technical team can take it on from there, the design and development of the system. Next, so those two are the main tasks. Apart from this, you will also provide help during the planning phase. So you will help estimate the task required for requirement related activities, right? Ensure that there are frameworks for scope management, change management, risk management, right? So the multiple things which you learn, how to identify the various stakeholders, how to identify the roles and responsibilities of various people. So these are some of the things we'll learn during the planning phase. Okay. Right? So planning would be during the initial stages of the project, where your project manager owns the complete project plan, and you as a business analyst would contribute from the requirements point of view. Similarly, a technical architect would contribute from a design and development point of view. A tester or a QA analyst would provide inputs from the testing point of view, right? So all these inputs are actually collated, and then the project manager would prepare your end-to-end plan, right? So that's the role in your planning phase. Right? As a business analyst, since you are the glue who is connecting the various people, you also have to ensure that the communication is properly maintained in the system, right? So within the project, right? So how to prepare the communication plan, how to ensure that it's ongoing, right? So what are the things you need to learn or things you need to know to manage the communications is also another the job profile of a business analyst. So we'll learn that as well. Right? And the solution assessment and validation, basically, though IIBA defines it in a different way, right? The actual job profile from what the industry demands is more of a testing kind of role, testing coordination, right? So once your solution is ready, right? So once you prepare your BRD, it's given to the technical team. They would design and develop the solution. After that, the system needs to be tested, right? And you would test as a vendor once, and then you take it to the client. The client would test again, right? So there are a lot of testing activities happening, and somebody needs to coordinate this. Also, if there are some defects which have arisen, you need to analyze them, right? So that's the role of a business analyst, which will be there during this testing phase, right? So these are the 5 knowledge areas which are there, right from the project planning till your solution assessment or testing phase, right? So these are the various levels of activity. Predominantly, it's during the initial stages of the project wherein you would understand the requirements and document, right? The rest of the phases like your design, development, and even testing, your role is not that significant, right? Apart from this, till now we have assumed that projects are approved, the budgets are allocated, right? Now, but if you look at large complex projects, it could even be it could even run into hundreds of millions of dollars, right? Now, how do you build a business case for that, right? So that's the most complex part of it, and those kind of activities are called as enterprise analysis. First, you'll identify what opportunities are there for the organization, then what kind of resources or investments do they require, and what is the benefit you will get from that. So these kind of activities would constitute the enterprise analysis. This is the most complex activity, and in fact it's actually evolving into a different role called as an enterprise architect, right? So enterprise architect is involved in this. So there are separate certifications also, like TOGAF is one of them, and they are evolving into a different role, right? So people who are actually planning to get into a role of a business analyst right now are never involved into these activities, right? So you are onboarded only during the planning phase, or even after the planning, because at least you need some experience to do the planning also, right? So, but enterprise analysis is a completely off thing. It's very senior folks who are in that industry and then who understand the complete technology of that particular industry. So those are the guys who get into that kind of role. So I don't really concentrate on that because it's not significant for us from a job perspective, right? So we generally tend to ignore that, right? So I'll just give you an overview about it once we complete the rest of the 5 knowledge areas. So that's what we would cover in this course, right? So, and I think by now you're clear with the role of a business analyst as well, right?
Yeah.
So what exactly is expected out of a business analyst, right? Yeah. So, like I said, the course is specifically for IT projects, because the term business analyst is used across industries with various job descriptions, right? So what we're looking at,
this is not a generalized for all the fields. It's only for IT.
It is for an IT project in any industry, right? So because if you look at a financial business analyst, a financial business analyst would be doing a different kind of activity. He would be analyzing the stock market and then saying which stocks to buy and all, right? So it's a complete. So they still use the term analyst, but it's a different job profile, right? So most of the jobs.
No, I'm saying like for the healthcare field where you have the business analyst. So they are different from the IT business analyst?
Not really. It's the same business analyst. So any projects which are which are executing in any of the industries, be it healthcare, financial services or insurance, right? Any industry, if you are implementing an IT project, you need to know these. You need to have these skill sets, right?
Okay.
So see, some industries like a financial business analyst, right? He would be, the job profile itself is different. A financial analyst, they will generally call it as. So people tend to confuse that with an IT business analyst. So that's what I wanted to clarify. Right?
Yes. Yeah, the financial analyst is different.
Yes. So people tend to confuse that with the business analyst, and then that's to avoid that. I just clarify that right away that it's for IT projects across industries, right? So be it healthcare, manufacturing, anything, you would be able to do that, right? So we are aligned to that, IIBA's Business Analyst Book of Knowledge. I am covering the 6 knowledge areas what are specified by IIBA, right? And before that, I presume that most of my students who come in are from a non-technical or non-IT background, so don't even know how a typical project is executed. So what I do is, I spent a couple of sessions giving an orientation of how are the teams structured in a typical client and vendor organizations. How is a project governance structure? What are the various phases of an IT project? What are the various models of IT projects again, right? The software development life cycle, SDLC as we call it, right? So we'll learn all that during the initial 2 to 3 sessions, and that gives you an understanding about who are the various people in the project, whom do you have to interact, who is handling what. So that gives you a clarity, right? So then we actually get into the role of a business analyst and start learning each one of these topics, right? So as part of the planning, we'll first do a stakeholder analysis, then identify the activities and estimate them. We'll learn to manage scope, change and risk, right? We'll learn the various elicitation models. There are basically 10 of them. And wherever required, wherever applicable, most of the, almost all of the topics, I would take some case studies. Some of them are from a real life experience. Some of them are very simple examples which you can understand. The reason being, some topics are really complex, like, your analysis and documentation techniques, right? So, since the topic itself is complex, I didn't want to bring in the requirements which are again complex, right? So, you tend to lose focus and then start focusing onto the requirement, right? So I take simpler examples like, a hospital management system or a library management system. So these kind of examples which are easier to understand as from a requirements point of view, right? So if I talk about a system which is a credit analytics system, right? So it's difficult because we don't even know what the requirement is. So understanding the requirement itself would take time, and then then applying that concept onto the requirement, it's difficult to understand the underlying concept, right? So we tend to avoid that. This again is from the feedback from the various sessions I had. So initially I started with some examples from my real life, but usually my projects would have been for like 2 to 3 months of requirements, and trying to cover them in an hour or 2 does not justify it, right? So it's really difficult to do that. So we take simple examples wherever applicable, but for planning and elicitation, I'll take some examples which are actually from my work experience.
Oh.
Right. So wherever required, like for at least the analysis and design, I generally use some simpler examples, right? And then for testing, again, it's a generic concept. I'll take some examples and then show you through the complete process of how testing happens. How do you plan for your test? How do you create test cases? How do you execute them? How do you analyze the defects? Right. So that process is again, I'll take it up from some examples and then cover that. Right. So that's basically is what we'll cover the course. The target audience I'm looking out is mostly people who are new to this profession. Right. So it could be people just out of college or people from other industries, right, or even technical people wanting to move into a business analyst role, but primarily new to the role of a business analyst, right? So we are not focusing on certifications because that would require a different kind of course structure, because they would have already worked as a business analyst and then take the certification, but since we are not focusing on taking the certification and we are new to the role of a business analyst, we would focus a lot more onto the fundamentals, right? So again, the training material is all well organized. It's all together onto a Google Drive. I'll just share that. It will involve a lot of material, including a lot of presentations and then your additional reading materials, right, and a lot of templates as well, right? So each of the deliverable or wherever you are contributing as a business analyst, right, each and everything we will look at as a template and then see what is it that you as a business analyst would contribute onto that, so that you have a first-hand understanding about what is it that you have to do when you get into your real-life project. Right. So that's onto the training material. The primary skills of a business analyst, again, you need to have good analytical skills and interpersonal communication skills. Right. You should need to be able to talk to somebody, understand what they're saying, and document it clearly. Right. So those are the two I would say are the most important. You need to know how a typical IT SDLC is happening, right? SDLC stands for Software Development Lifecycle. This would cover it in the initial couple of sessions, so you'll have a basic understanding of that. It's good to have domain and functional knowledge. Right? If you understand a particular industry, that would be advantage to you. Why? Because it makes your job easier to understand the requirements. So your requirement elicitation becomes easier. Let's say you are from the healthcare background, right? So you understand what are the intricacies or the processes within that healthcare business. Let's say you are from the finance field, right? So you know how a typical capital markets would work, right? So what are the various roles, what is the processes, right? So it makes you easier to understand the requirement, right? So that's the edge which a domain or functional knowledge would provide. Having said that, it's not mandatory, right? So if you have good elicitation techniques, you can actually understand the requirements even if you don't really know the field as well, right? But some people, if you feel they some profiles which are really complex projects, right? So they would look out for profiles which has experience in those in this space. Yeah, right. Again, you could continue as a business analyst, if that's an interest of you, right? You could actually move into project management because you already are doing a lot of coordination activities. There are quite a few overlaps between a business analyst and a project manager, right? So you can actually move into a project manager kind of role if that is of interest to you, right? You could move into business development wherein you can understand the the requirements of your prospects and convert them into projects wherein you'll win new business for the the company you're working for, right? You could also move into consulting if you have gained a considerable amount of functional knowledge, right? So that depends again on your further interest and all. So these are the various career paths again as a next level to your BA role, right?